All right, so on to the workshop details. One of the big questions that users have is what boards, what software development kit revisions do you currently support in your workshop? So we decided, and we kind of came up with this idea on the fly, is to create sort of a workshop data sheet. And that workshop data sheet would say, as you look down below there, what hardware targets do we currently support? What rev numbers, what silicon rev numbers? What software development kits we currently support? Rev of CoComposer Studio, which is our IDE. Which versions of SysBIOS, Unified Instrumentation Architecture, and XDC, what is currently supported in the workshop. And of course, we're going to populate our workshop site here with this information, but you've probably already seen this document before because as part of our marketing materials, landing pages, we had this PDF available to all users so they could see what they were getting themselves into in terms of revs. Now, over time, Scott, how are we going to update this document year after year for our users?
Well, it might even be more often than once a year.
I hope it's more often because I think the vendor, like TI, they probably ship new revs every quarter or two.
Yeah, so TI's goal often, at this point in time, their goal is to be updating their SDKs once per quarter. And so our goal is to kind of come along behind that and make sure that all of the materials that we're putting together for you, all of the labs that we have, don't break from one rev to another. Now, a vendor would never do that, would they?
No.
Break your code. If some of you have done this before, you'll know that we're unfortunately not joking about that. But so our goal is to kind of keep the workshop up to date with revs, especially things when we see something bad happen with a revision. So we're going to be looking out for that and helping you with getting past those types of challenges.
Yeah, so I think the key takeaway is continue to come back to the site over and over again to see the update on the revisions and get the most up-to-date.
Check out the data sheet.
Labs and solutions, check out the data sheet. So now we're going to provide a little bit of advice about how to approach the labs depending on whether you're a software engineer, a manager, somebody just looking, kicking the tires, or, hardcore software developer. So, Scott, over the years, we've had some users, some clients, TI customers over the years say, hey, that workshop's 4 days long. You've got this material, this lecture material. You've got a couple days of labs in there. Can we just knock this down to 2 days and not do the labs? What an awful question to hear because it actually seems a little odd because more than half the learning, at least with our workshops, is actually in the labs. There are things we do not cover in the videos and the PowerPoint slides that we go into detail in the labs because it's right in front of you. We cause problems to happen. There are errors that happen. There are things, and that's where you learn is when things go wrong and then how to solve that problem with the tools in front of you.
Yeah, I think it's that, and I think it's also when you have kind of fairly detailed steps that you have to go through, sometimes it's just hard to show on a single static slide. We will show you some items occasionally here and there via a video, but it's usually best if you get a chance to actually do it yourself.
So the takeaway there is if you really want to learn everything that we have to teach and the skills that you need, absolutely do the labs. Now given that, there's a life saying that you get out of life what you put into it. But we also know that there are different types of people, there are different types of roles, there are different types of people that actually want to learn some things about TI RTOS, and people's time is different. Their motivation for taking the workshop is different, and that's okay. We allow all types, right, Scott?
Welcome all types.
You welcome all types. So one of the ways that you could actually go through the labs is, if you wanted to, you could learn the concepts in the video, and then in terms of the labs, you could copy and paste from the solution or the README files, put them into the actual lab source files, build, load, and run. It'd be very, very quick, maybe 5 minutes. You could have something run.
Actually, we see a lot of managers do this. It's because a lot of times managers don't have time to learn all the technical details and do everything themselves, but they want to stay up on top of what their folks are doing,
right.
Their engineers. So being able to kind of quickly go through the labs this way works out really well for a lot of them.
Another way to go through the labs is actually the initial intent was we wrote procedures, step-by-step procedures to get through each part of the lab. So our honest recommendation to most users is start at step 1, go all the way to the end. We explain the different steps and what you're learning in those steps. You can, click around, do some other things, and then come back to those steps as you see fit. But this is our main recommendation is to take the labs step by step.
One thing to kind of add on to that is that, we give you very detailed detailed instructions early on. And then, by the time you're doing something the second, third, fifth time, we might not give you all the step-by-step directions. You can always go back to a previous lab. But this is one of the reasons why we like to suggest to take things in sequence so that you get the detailed steps early on and then can just quickly go through it on your own when we tell you a more broad step later on.
Yeah, because some of the later labs really rely upon skills and competence that came from earlier labs. So if you're one of the more experienced users, or you just love a great challenge, is at the end of every chapter we have a lab slide. And there's no steps, where there's kind of a few high-level procedural steps. If you want to take the challenge based upon the diagrams we show and the 2 or 3 main heading steps that we show in the lab slide and say, hey, I'm up to the challenge to try to make this happen and do the solution without any help. And if you run into a roadblock, you always have a fallback of coming back to the step-by-step procedures. Use that at your own risk.
Good luck to you experienced users.